This is another test.
Jack Dorsey, aos 36 anos, é o fundador do Twitter e do Square, duas das principais empresas do Vale do Silício nos Estados Unidos. Ele vem ao Brasil agora de olho no potencial do país para empreendedores da internet. É interessante porque ele acha que as cidades podem ser revolucionadas pelo uso da tecnologia e quer, quem sabe até, se tornar prefeito da cidade de Nova York. A gente conversou com ele sobre esses e outros assuntos aqui para o Globo News, Ciência e Tecnologia. O Twitter nasceu em 2006, em um momento em que as pessoas começavam a se cansar de escrever nos blogs, populares até então. Em vez de textos longos, apenas 140 caracteres, que funcionam como flashes de informação. Seu fundador, Jack Dorsey, disse que uma das inspirações para o site foram as mensagens de texto enviadas pelo celular e as atualizações de status nos programas de troca de mensagens. O Twitter rapidamente ganhou popularidade, chegando hoje a 500 milhões de usuários cadastrados, sendo mais de 30 milhões deles brasileiros. Em um mundo com cada vez mais informação, onde o tempo para ler e escrever fica escasso, o Twitter apresentou uma solução: abreviar a comunicação humana ao mínimo essencial. Isoladamente, um tweet pode não dizer muita coisa, mas, considerados no seu conjunto, são uma ferramenta importante para acompanhar em tempo real o que acontece no mundo, inclusive com repercussões políticas. É só lembrar do seu importante papel nas revoluções do mundo árabe e até mesmo nas campanhas eleitorais, inclusive no Brasil. A lot of people must ask you, why does Twitter have only 140 characters? And why do you work with constraints in all your companies? Maybe it's because of Catholic school, I'm not sure.
Catholic school provided a lot of constraint, it did. But I believe fundamentally constraint inspires creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And if I give you a paintbrush and I ask you to go paint a huge white wall, you'll be a little resonant to it. You'll have to compose yourself, think about it, because you don't want to mess it up, right? Mm-hmm. But if I give you that same paintbrush and a business card, and I ask you to make a mark on it, you'll make a mark right away. So that constraint of the canvas, I think, is really, really important. It makes it more of the moment, off the cuff, and people are more likely to share. So that's from a conceptual standpoint. But from a practical standpoint, 160 characters was a limitation of SMS. And if we fit into that limitation, if we fit in that constraint, we could actually work on every single device on the planet outside, out of the box. So SMS is built even in $5 cell phones in the middle of Kenya, which means that anyone in the world, no matter who they are, no matter where they are, could participate in a global conversation in the same way that Justin Bieber could in the United States using his iPad or his iPhone. So it was quite meaningful in terms of the number of people who could participate immediately, not only share what's around them, but also participate in that conversation, receive what's happening in the world, all over the world, but also that sense that you can approach it and you can share something and it'll be just as beautiful as anything else.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. Twitter has been used for a lot of political purposes. So, for instance, governments everywhere, like the city of Rio de Janeiro, monitor Twitter feeds in order to manage the city. How do you see the importance of this usage of Twitter?
One of the most exciting things is how dynamic the usage has been. So we built it to simply share what was happening around us and to see what was happening in the world, and governments took to it, and cities took to it, and movements took to it, revolutions took to it. And it really speaks to the utility of the platform, where the smallest individual in the world can have the same power as the largest organization in the world. It's all based on merit of idea, and what people are doing with it, right? So I think it's amazing and inspiring when cities find a use for technology that allows them to govern in a better way, to make sure that they're doing the right thing for the citizens. And I think that's one of the most important aspects of Twitter, is it's not just about tweeting. It's about seeing what's happening in the world. You can follow your favorite sports. You can follow what's happening in the city. You can follow what's happening with a politician that you're interested in, a public figure, a celebrity. They're all in one place, and you don't have to tweet to get value out of it. You can just simply read, and you can read it right from your phone. Right? It can be delivered to you instantly. So to get notifications that the bus is broken, or there's traffic, or there's something going on in the park that's blocking something else, like amazing for a city to provide its citizens without them having to do much work at all.
Let's talk about Square, your other company. So Square is for making mobile payments and for revolutionizing the way that people actually make payments in stores and everything that they buy. How do you think is the future of mobile payments and technology? And that's especially important for Brazil because a large portion of people here don't even have bank accounts. Yeah. Do you think Square, for instance, can be the next step that might even help these people?
Yeah, I think the focus on mobile payments is the wrong focus. I think it's really around the experience. We want to make payments disappear completely, right? Payments is something that feels like a burden. It's mechanical. It's something that one has to get through. And not a lot of people can participate in it because it's so difficult to get a bank account. It's so difficult to accept credit cards. It's so difficult just to exchange value. And there's a lot of friction. So we aim to make all that easy. And we're focused not on payments, but really on commerce. Commerce is the activity between a buyer and a seller, right? It's very, very simple. We were trading goods, we were trading things before we were using language to speak to each other, right? So it is equivalent to conversation, it is equivalent to communication, but it's become very difficult and very abstract and inaccessible to many people. So I do believe that we can increase the participation. I do believe that we can increase the velocity just by making it simpler for folks all over the world. So we're excited to bring it outside the United States and go all over.
Do you follow the debates, for instance, regarding Bitcoin and the dematerialization of the currency? Do you think Square is part of that, or you're looking beyond that?
I think Bitcoin is very interesting, and I think there is a movement happening there. I believe, our take has always been we're going to accept any form of payment that comes over the counter, right? Because that means the seller always makes a sale, and the buyer always gets what they want. So again, it's not about the payment device used; it's that act of trading, right? So if it's cash, we accept cash. If it's checks, we accept checks. If it's credit cards, we accept that. If it's Bitcoin, we'll accept that. It's really where our customers are and what buyers are using to exchange that value. So we have ideas about what we would want to see in the future, but we're going to accept everything that people are using.
So you also created Vine. Everybody is now kind of excited with Vine because it's a company that has to do with video. Do you think the future of technology is basically moving in the direction of video away from the keyboard?
Yeah, I think Vine is amazing because you take a picture of the beach outside us, the waves rolling in, and it can say a lot, but you're missing the sound, you're missing the roll of the waves, you're missing the movement. So Vine has this amazing constraint of 6 seconds, right? And it loops, and you can point it at the beach right outside of us, and you can share not only that there's these beautiful waves in front of you, but here's what they sound like, and here's what they look like when they're moving. So in the spirit of really giving people this ambient awareness of what's happening around the world, I think it's amazing. And the 6 seconds is really important in that as you're scrolling through these videos, you can actually consume the entire video at once, right? And you hear the sound, and as you go to the next video, just scrolling up, a new sound comes in and plays. So it's a really magical experience, and I've fallen in love with it. And every time I see a picture, I'm saying, well, why isn't it moving? Where's the sound? You know, it's really changed my perception of media, and especially media on a mobile device. Right? And I think the team has really cracked the code on video. Finally, to make it small, to make it fast, to make it valuable in those 6 seconds.
There are some people that compare you to Steve Jobs. You were the CEO of Twitter, and then you left the company just to come back as the chairman. So, do you think that was a failure? How does failure actually is important for achieving success?
Well, I was always chairman of the board, so I didn't come back to be chairman. But I think the biggest thing that one would take away from Steve Jobs is you shouldn't follow in his footsteps. You shouldn't follow in anyone else's footsteps, right? So I think that's great advice. I think you have to build your own path, and that path ideally does have many failures, because you'll learn very quickly from them and you'll iterate. That's one of the reasons I love open source so much. Is I had no idea what I was doing when I first started programming, and I put something out there and I got a lot of critique, like, this is terrible work, this is bad work, why are you doing this, you're an idiot, all these other things. But it makes you better. If you want to be better, it makes you better. And there's countless examples of how that failure, embracing that failure, making those mistakes, and being able to recognize, but most importantly move on, really creates amazing works, right? And I think it's absolutely necessary to do anything, to build a company, to build a product, to paint a great painting, right? You're going to screw up at some point, right? And someone's not going to like it, and you choose to listen to that feedback and improve it or not.
So, Jack, you have created 2 very big companies. Now you have a third one, which is Vine, that is connected with Twitter. What is next?
Well, I think with Twitter, we want to make sure that we're building something that's immediately relevant to people, that they can pick up and they get instant value from, and they can see the world, right? They see the pulse of the planet. Right now, I can take my phone out of my pocket and I can actually see everything that's happening in the world right away. And that's amazing. We've never had that before. And we have a lot of work to do to make that even easier, and to make it more accessible, to enable more people to participate. And Vine is interesting in that it allows another dimension, enables another dimension of what's happening in the world, which is sound, which is movement. And I think it's a great complement to what Twitter is doing. So making that sense of what's happening in the world really easy is something we need to do a lot more of. And Square, our mission is to make commerce easy, so that act of buying and selling, that activity, to make it easy for everyone. So if I want to sell something that I've worked really hard to make, I don't even have to think about it. It just works. And if I want to buy something, payments disappear, right? It's all about just this human interaction. And I want this, you have that, and we exchange value for it, right? So those are enough for me. I'm working on that.
That's good. Another thing that is happening in the world is a lot of governments are actually trying to censor content. That happens, for instance, in China. Google has been banned from China to Hong Kong, and even in Brazil. So, for instance, Twitter has had at least one post that has been removed by a court order because of political speech. How do you see that problem? Is that something that concerns you?
I think the most important thing about Twitter and why we're so different from most other technologies is that we are public by nature. We are open by nature. Everything is done out in the open, and there's always correction that happens when you have that sort of openness, right? So I believe fundamentally the most important things will always keep coming up again and again and again and again, no matter how much it's pushed down. Free communication will always find a way, right? We'll always find a way to enable free and voluminous communication, and Twitter is a venue for that. You know, that there will be times when people push that down, but I believe fundamentally it'll always come back up, and that has the most positive impact in the world.
Do you think that technology can change the way that cities are organized? And actually, I heard that you wanted to become the mayor of New York City. Is that correct?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I was deciding between political science and computer science because I love cities so much. And I found a lot of parallels between the two, actually. And I found that if I went into political science and I became a mayor, I could enact a policy, and I could write a law, or I could change a rule. And I might see the effect within 2 years or 4 years or 8 years. But I could do something similar, and I could write a program that simulated a law or a policy or a rule, and I could see the effect within 2 seconds, right? And the question for me has always been, where can I have more influence, by telling people or by showing people? And the answer has always been showing people. I think a technology like Twitter, I think Square, can show how cities can use technology to be that balancing act, to be that governor that that we need as civilization. So the answer has always been to keep building technologies rather than to go into politics. I don't know if that'll change, but I'm having fun right now, and I think it's working. So.
I think it is. I'm sure it is. Yep. There's a lot of young people in Brazil that want to become entrepreneurs. So you are very young, and you were successful very early. What is the message that you have to give to all those people here?
First and foremost, that this word entrepreneur, if you look at the definition, it means taking significant financial risk. Right? It doesn't say start a company. It says taking significant financial risk. And it's really an attitude. So an entrepreneur is an attitude that you take on to really change things, to take big risk in the spirit of doing something positive, doing something right, something that you believe in. And I think we need to consider that. You can do that by starting a company. You can also do that inside of a company. You can do that inside of an organization. You can do that inside of a government. So fundamentally, you can do it wherever. It's just having the conviction. And having the conviction means that you know exactly where you're going, right? You can paint a picture of what you want to see in the world, and then the work is actually working backwards from that and figuring out where to start, right? And then fighting like hell to make sure it exists, right? So that to me is the role of the entrepreneur, is to have that picture, to have that painting of what they want to see in the world, and then work backwards from that, and do whatever it takes to make sure it happens. But I think a lot of people get in the habit of going down a thought process like, well, I really believe in this idea, but if only I had this person to work with it, but he's off doing another thing, and I don't have any money, so I can't do that, and I really need this technology to exist in the world. It'll probably exist in about 2 years, so maybe I'll do it then. And all these are excuses that'll pause and stop you from doing what you really want to do. And you just have to start. You have to get it out of your head. You have to write it down. You have to code it. You have to paint it. Whatever your medium is, whatever your brush is, get started today and show people. And in showing people, you get feedback. And they'll say, this is the stupidest idea I've ever heard. And that makes it better, right? Or sometimes they're wrong. And oftentimes they may be wrong. But also have the courage to recognize when they're right. And that you need to put the idea away on the shelf for a bit and pick it back up later. I tried to build Twitter in 2001, and it was the wrong time, and I didn't have a team around me. The technology was way off. In 2006, it worked out. It was a very, very long time, right? And you have to have this fine balance of patience, but also a lot of impatience, because the impatience will drive you to get whatever you want to see in the world out there as quickly as possible. So it's always stressful, but it's a rush, and I think the most important thing is just to get started.
Very good. There is a movement now that says that kids should learn how to program in schools. You are a programmer yourself, so do you think this is an important skill to be learned?
I think it's great. I think programming don't think about it just as like, well, I want to become an engineer and I want to do I want to do programming all day. It's a very interesting way to think about the world. The biggest thing that I did when I was learning how to program is it just made me think about the world in a very different way. It taught me how to think in a different way, in the same way that mathematics does, in the same way that music does. Right? All of these are related, and I think programming, it's never been easier to get into it. I can go to an internet cafe and pull up a web page and actually learn how to write Python in a day, right? And it doesn't take a lot of math. It's not this huge barrier that one has to overcome. You're smart enough to do it today, but you just have to have the will and the desire to do it. And it may not be to become a programmer. You may not want to do that, but I would definitely urge people to try it, to attempt it, because it makes you think in a very, very creative and unique way that I think you'll be able to apply to whatever you want to do in life.
So how do you see the competition? Companies like Facebook are criticized for being maybe too closed as opposed to Twitter's ideas. How do you think that is important for the future of the internet?
I can't speak to how they want to run their companies, but we've always believed in transparency and openness and running a company with those principles. And we think it works. We think it allows us to move very fast. We think it allows the people that are using the service to move very fast. It's just what we believe in. But I think there's many paths to success, and some people have different roads that they take. But this is ours, and it works very well for us and the people using the service. So we want to push it more.
So my last question is, what do you expect from Brazil? Twitter is opening an office here. There's a lot of things that are rising the interest over the country. How do you see Brazil right now?
Well, you have a lot of amazing events coming up in the next 4 years, and the world wants to see them. The world can't all be here, but the world wants to participate. So the more that Brazil can share the amazing things that are happening in this country through Twitter, through Vine, the more the world can see, and the more the world gets engaged in Brazil. And I think it helps everyone in the country, but also it allows a connection between Brazil and the rest of the world. Not only will people be sharing what's happening here, but they'll be reading what's happening here, what's happening just right around them, and getting a sense of the most important things, the most meaningful things. So I think the responsibility I would love to see is just really share what's great about this country with the world. And we're providing 2 great platforms to do that, in Twitter and Vine, and I hope to see a lot.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, Jack. It was great talking to you.
Thank you.